Yeah, thank you very much to organizing committee AIOS, and thank you Dr. Ajay and Dr. Satyajit and all panelists and experts. Um, just the talk is optical coherence tomography in the retina. Basically, OCT helps in a qualitative or quantitative analysis of the retina, especially useful for diagnosis, planning the management, and the follow-up. So we started with time domain, but so quickly we moved on with the recent advances with the spectral domain, then enhanced with the enhanced depth spectral domain, and what we have now is a spectral OCT. So, but workhorse is mainly you have a spectral domain, and most of this talk will be surrounding generally concentrated on SDOCT. So basically, based on relative reflectivity, the retina and choroidal layers are divided into different zones and bands or layers. So when you see a typical normal OCT, you have a like a neurofiber layer, inner and outer flexiform layers, external limiting membrane, and RP Brooks membrane bond complex are generally they are hyperreflective bands, as against ganglion cell layer, inner nuclear layer and outer nuclear layer, and outer segment of photoreceptors, they are generally a hyporeflective bands. In between, you have ellipsoid zone and interdigital zone. They are gives hyperreflective zones and myoid zone, choriocapillaries, and in general choroid generally have a hyporeflectivity. Typically, standard scan protocol, what we do is a macular cube, which gives a quick overview of macular architecture. And then we have a radial line scan where you have multiple line scans arranged in an equal angle with a common axis. Or you can have a raster scan where a series of parallel line which are scan can be oriented in any angle, which gives us high resolution scan at a specific plane. So we also use color coding where warm colors indicate thicker retina and cool color indicate thinner retina, and we have overlying superimposed ETDRS grid which gives exact thickness values in 1, 3 and 6 millimeter circle. Typical macular scan report, as you see, we can just get this printout. We'll go in a detail with that. So this like marking, as you see here, use a basically macular thickness analysis that scan indicate. You have a SLO image with ILM RP thickness map overlaying on it, and you can have ETDRS grid which automatically gets centered on a fovea with a fovea finder which gives this value is here, and we can have a and this gives exactly thickness values as I mentioned earlier. You have these two images below with a blue and pink margin, what shows basically the hair, crosshair, vertical and horizontal scan location on this your OCT with a cube. And along with that, we have a 3D topographic display of the macular thickness map, and you get a segmentation of ILM and RP for detailed evaluation, and also macular parameters which are compared generally with the normative data. Macular change analysis is another one we do where you have a post-acquisition which is very useful for a follow-up scans and gives a post-acquisition registration, and fovea finder software ensures repeatability of thickness measures which can exactly overlap here, and as you see it shows a registration succeeded that indicates that they are exactly matching over each other. So typical scan, when you have to read it, just check first patient's details, check whether scan protocol which you would like to have use either cube line or raster is appropriate. Check your scan line going exactly in an area of your interest. Good quality can generally have a uniform illumination with no artifacts, and signal strength is usually more than 6. And coming to abnormal OCTs, you can classify abnormalities depending on contour, thickness, reflectivity of the scan, whether there is a loss of tissue or presence of some abnormal tissue, and look at the location of abnormalities. Typically, when there is a fluid, it reduces the reflectivity, and like hard exudates, calcification, hemorrhages, fibrosis, scarring, few membranes in a retina or in a vitreous, they increase the reflectivity. So typically we go a few examples where you have hyperreflective membrane over the retina with sometime with or without distortion of retina, showing a retinal membrane, as against with macular traction, you see a taut attachment here distorting the macular area. Changing in the thickness, when you talk about with the fluid have a hyporeflective, it can be in a subretinal space or it can be in a sub-RPA, showing a RPA detachment here with a subretinal sensory detachment as well, go into change in thickness or increased thickness of the retina. And you have a macular edema secondary to CRVO or BRVO, we have a few hyporeflective cystic spaces because of fluid accumulation, and also has sensory detachment here. Foveal telangiectasia, parafoveal telangiectasia usually have like a inner retinal cavitation as you see here, or can have outer retinal breaks and also cause thinning of the retina. And diabetic macular edema, you can get a spongy edema with the presence of cystic hyporeflective spaces. Typically, when you look at a subretinal space, you have a central serous choroidal retinopathy where sensory detachment having a hyporeflective space full of fluid, but sometimes you can have a fibrin material which gives a hyperreflectivity. Coming to pigment epithelial detachment, depending on the field, you can have a, say if you're serous PED, you have a clear hyporeflection, or you can have a hemorrhagic PED where the hemorrhage blocks the underlying structures, you get a shadowing effect. If you have fibrovascular PED, we have moderate to high reflectivity material with a hyporeflective clay, can have associated subretinal fluid. And when you have a drusenite PED, where you have a high hyperreflective drusen with sometimes associated fluid around it. Abnormal tissues, when you talk typically of choroidal neovascular membrane, you can have a subretinal hyperreflective material. It can be subretinal or sub-RPA depending on location of the CNVM, and can have surrounded subretinal fluid and also associated RPA detachment. When it loss of tissue, typically you have lamellar hole or full thickness hole or outer lamellar hole, and you have sometimes operculum showing on this scan. So choroidal scan nowadays with the new entity pachychoroid syndrome, we have where the choroid is thicker and also having a dilated choroidal vessels. SIRF's OCT is better because it has a much deeper penetration and longer scan. So newer development, just to touch upon, you have OCT angiography. We can have a handheld OCT or have now intraoperative OCT as well. So newer and newer tools we are getting now. Just to summarize, OCT is a non-invasive, quick, reproducible test which helps to get near accurate tissue diagnosis. To use macular cube to evaluate pathology in toto. Use macular thickness map with the overlying ETDRS grid for location of pathology, and use raster line scan to evaluate each layer of the retina in detail. To interpret any OCT, check reflectivity, contour, thickness, loss of tissue or presence of abnormal tissue, identify location of the abnormality and the layers involved, and take appropriate measurements for follow-up, comparison, and examinations. Just a caution, never interpret an OCT in isolation, always correlate it clinically. I just acknowledge Dr. Mona and Dr. Raja Ganesh who helped me this presentation, and I suggest this article in IGO published in 2018. Most of presentation is based on this article. It's very, very useful. I think postgraduates can use this one. Thank you very much for patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So many of your students have learned so much from you, and so many will be learning in future. Sir, one thing which is there now, the scenario in India is very different. All the medical colleges have this OCT now. Once the postgraduates are passing, and because this program is specifically focused on the postgraduates, once they pass out, they realize that OCT per se individually is a very costly machine for them to buy. So unless they are going for a VR fellowship or something, if they want to start on their own, it is practically impossible to buy a OCT for somebody who is starting. Sir, what is your advice to those students who are passing out and still want to do retina work? And at that point, initially, they cannot afford a OCT. And in today's scenario, without OCT, you cannot do. So what is your advice, sir?
I think rather than me, Dr. Ajay can answer that question well. Because nowadays, I know because of group practice or you have a diagnostic center, those are people are investing and having their diagnostic center have different diagnostic modalities, and ophthalmologists can send their patient, get the scan done and review those. Probably that's what maybe I'm working in institute, may not be the right person, but Ajay is, I think, best person what they are doing actually.
I think you have already suggested that that's the way to go. I mean, the
Yeah.
junior ophthalmologists, they pull in their money 4 or 5 in a center where they can pull in money and catch the patients. That's
Yeah,
a
totally,
good
yeah,
practice.
totally.
I think
Dr. Anirudh, would you like to comment on to guide the postgraduates on what kind of a OCT they should initially buy, right from spectral OCT to OCT-A? There are so many options now. What is your advice for somebody who is starting? What should they buy?
I think the spectral domain OCT, one should go for a spectral domain OCT initially, because still the OCT angio, we are still learning about OCT angio, and with only OCT angio, it's very difficult. And a small comment, already sir has mentioned everything, but the mistakes what we see generally, the students jump into the diagnosis rather than they should actually interpret the findings in the OCT, and they should not comment seeing only one scan, because this is a common mistake generally performed by the students.